Okay. So let's get started. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So first of all, Jazakallah for joining the session. We had a similar session probably 2 or 3 months back, wherein we had discussed about basics of Salesforce and we had covered relevant topics. So the link for the same is provided in the meeting description. So anyways, I'll try to cover some topics with basics even today, along with my current agenda. So anything related to how the Salesforce work and what is Salesforce and the basic architecture of Salesforce and the different types of clouds that we have in Salesforce, that is different services provided with in Salesforce. All these details are present in that previous video, so you can probably whoever is interested can go ahead with that and look whenever you get time. So let's get started then. So in previous session, we had discussed about cloud computing and what is cloud computing and what is Salesforce as a CRM. Then we had seen what is multi-tenant and metadata architecture and their respective benefits, and which is nothing but the Salesforce architecture. Then we saw what are the different Salesforce editions, and for the starters, which particular edition should be access to, and we saw how we can log in and sign up with Salesforce dev org. Apart from that, we also saw the different products and services offered by Salesforce, like Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Commerce Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Health Cloud, etc., with their respective examples. Then after that, the main topics like what is configuration and customization, in other terms, admin, Salesforce admin, and Salesforce development. We saw what exactly it is and what is the difference between them. And under that, we also saw the different automation process that we have in configuration. uh, Apart from that, we saw what is customization and the relevant topics like triggers, Apex classes. We did not go much in detail, but we just had an overview discussion on this. Then post that, we saw Salesforce certifications, like what are the different types of certifications that are there in the current industry, and the roadmap to, like, if you want to be a developer, what are the relevant certifications that you can take up. Then careers in Salesforce. So, inshallah, today, in continuation to that, I would be covering some of the topics here. So, today I would be covering like what is the basic data structure, data model structure in Salesforce, wherein we'll be covering what are objects, relationships, and what are fields, records, etc. Post that, we would be discussing on the security model in Salesforce. Also, we would be discussing on sharing model as well, like how we can define an access at object level or field level or at like a record level. Don't worry, I'll try to explain that with the example by creating those respective scenarios. Then post that, we'll be discussing on the business logic, or in other terms, like what are the formula fields and validation rules, etc. Then after that, the different automation process that we have in configuration in Salesforce, like we have workflows, process builders, and flows, and what is the main difference between them. We would try to like look into that with real-time examples there. Then after that, if time permits, then we can have an overview on what is customization or development means. And to start with, we can start off with triggers. So I would try to briefly explain like how trigger works. So I'll try to make this as an interactive session with an hands-on demo. So please let me know if you have any doubts. You can stop me. But yes, questions we can take at the last um, of the session. Jazakallah. So previously we had discussed. So to those of you who are new to Salesforce, this is how Salesforce uh, page looks like, and this is for an admin view. So in the last session, we had discussed how to sign up and how to create an application, custom application in Salesforce. So before getting started, let's understand what are applications in Salesforce. Basically, application, as the name suggests, as most of you would be aware, it's like nothing but group of objects or data which are designed to work as a single function, wherein we can achieve our functionalities or real-time requirements accordingly. So to that, we categorize the data in the form of objects. So applications, see, first thing is in Salesforce as a CRM, we have already built-in applications wherein you need not create separate applications if you are working in sales, or if you're working in terms of service, etc., wherein we have sales and service clouds. But yes, if you want to create your own custom application, you can do that by going to application manager. So my screen is visible, right? My org screen. Could you please confirm? Okay, Jazakallah. So in the last session, we had created this custom application testing app. So I'll be opening that. So when you go to this app manager, uh, you would be seeing all the applications that the custom applications that are being created. So in the last session, we had created this testing app application. So I'll use the same thing. So as it loads, I'll try to cover up what is objects and fields in Salesforce. So objects are nothing but the um, database tables wherein data can be business related records, or data can be stored basically. So if you take a real time example, we have an object like account in Salesforce, which is a standard object that is already provided by Salesforce. So an account object actually has the details of all the companies or all the organizations. For instance, companies like Infosys or TCS or CTS, anything. So data related to them are stored in account object. So this particular object, right, it will have fields like account name, account billing address, account contact details, etc. So these details are nothing but the fields. So account name, account details, contact details, etc., can be stored in fields. So in database, basically objects are nothing but database tables, whereas fields are the columns in those objects, and the records are the relevant rows in those objects. So TCS is a separate record. Then details related to Infosys can be stored as a separate record. So these are the basic differences between an object and field. So this is our custom application that we had created last. So once we know how to create an application, let's see how we can create an object. So to create an object, you will have an object manager here. So we can go there, and once you go to the object manager, you will have a list of objects that are already created. So in Salesforce, we have two types of objects. One is standard object and a custom object. So standard objects are the built-in objects that are provided by Salesforce. But if you want to create your own object, you can create it by hitting a create button, and those objects are stored as custom objects. And one difference between both of them is the API name, that is the name through which whenever we are designing a logic, when we are at backend, we need to have a unique name, right? That name is defined with the API name. So for standard objects that are, we don't have an extension like underscore C, which is the case for a custom object. So for custom object, whenever you're designing an object, you will have the API name with an extension of underscore C. So through which you can understand that it's a custom object. So to create a custom object, I'll go to create and create a custom object. Let me create an object with the name service. Then you can define the description and the data type for this object. We'll have different data type like auto number or text. We can define it as text for now. Please stop me if you have any doubts or anything, if you're not understanding or if I'm too fast. So I've created this object, and once an object is created, I need to have a tab through which this particular object is visible, to which this object is visible in that application. So to create a tab and associate a tab with this object, I'll go to tabs. One good thing about Salesforce is, like, if you have any, if you want to create anything, or if you're accessing any particular automation process, you can directly search it rather than navigation. You can directly search it from here, and you can get your requirements done. So here I have created already few tabs with relevant objects, and I've associated those tabs with those objects. So for now, I'll create one for the object that I've created. So this is the object that I had created now. So I'll select that. I'll select this tab style. So for now, these are the different profiles that I have. I can define the tab visibility specific to the respective profiles. But for now, I would just make it as common. And these are the different applications, including our test applications. So we can define whether this tab should be visible specific to any particular application, or we can define that as well. But for now, I'll take it as a common one. So the tab is created. So once to access the application, you hit this button and go to view all. So this is our testing app. So I'll navigate it. So if you notice, the service tab is already created. Okay, so if I want to like change the tab position, then even that can be done when through accessing the application manager. I'll go to this testing app, edit, go to navigation items. So these are the tabs that are already there. So I can change the position accordingly. So I want the services above G service. So I can specify that. I can save it. Again, I'll go back to my app. I'll refresh. Still showing. Yes. So it's a refresh issue basically. So if we refresh multiple times, we'll have the tab alignment accordingly. Okay, there might be some issue because of which this is not visible. I'll check on it. So, but for now, without wasting time, let's see. Once we have created the tab and an object. So the next thing to understand is how to create a field. So I'll go back to that object manager. So as we discussed, fields are nothing but the columns in the database. So we can define any number of fields, any type of fields, like different data types. So we can have a look at it. So I'll go to this object services. So once you go to this object manager, when you access that particular custom object or standard object, you have few details here. Like first thing is it'll have a basic details. Then the second one is the fields and relationships. So this depicts the associated fields that are already there, like be it a standard field or a custom field. So you can have all the details related to that, like the field name, the type of field, and the type of data type, etc., and the field label. Then we have page layouts. Page layouts are nothing but the like the fields, you are just defining the different fields that are to be visible, uh, specific to any profile or anything. Like if you want the service layout, so it's at backend there might be like multiple fields, like 10 to 15 fields, but you would not be requiring those fields all to be displayed. Like for sales team, you would be requiring only certain fields, and for profile, for service profile, you would be requiring certain fields. So that can be defined by creating separate page layouts here, and you can assign those page layouts here. Go to page layout assignment, and you can add another page layout, and specific to the profiles you can add different page layouts, and you can change the fields, and you can add accordingly. Then these are like there are few more things like validation rule, flow triggers, and triggers, which all these details will be present on the left side. Now let's see how to create a custom field. So for the to this object, so I'll go to new. So here if you notice, as we create a new field, we'll have the different data types of which the fields can be created. I'll come back to what is a lookup field and a master detail relationship field when you're discussing about the relationships in Salesforce. But for now, you can ignore that. And also, I'll be discussing the formula field separately. Apart from that, if you notice, we have these types of fields like a checkbox field, or if you want to create expense related field like in services, the service expense or something, so we can use a currency field. Then service date, if you want to specify the service date, so you can use a date field. So but for now, yes, we have multiple fields in this, but for now we'll just use a text field and try to create a new field here. Service description. I'll just create a field with this name, and we can define the length, like the length of characters, the number of characters that it can accommodate. So I'll consider it as 255. And also, once you're creating a field, right, if you want to populate any value, since it's a description field, you would not be requiring. But if you want anything, if you're defining any pick list value or any values that are populated, so it can be considered through a filter criteria as well, that we'll discuss later. So I'll go to next. Then once I go to next, I have this field level securities. So here we are defining where this field is should be visible. Okay, to which profiles. These are the different profiles that we have in Salesforce. For now, I have created. So if you want this field to be not to be visible, we can remove that. Or if you want this field to be just a read only field, then we can specify that here. And then probably if you want this field to be added in that service layout, directly you can specify that here, or you can remove it. So I'll save this field. So our custom field is created here. Okay. So this is about creating fields in Salesforce. Then we'll understand what are the different relationships in Salesforce. See, now that we already have an object, different objects in Salesforce, it is necessary for us to, have a relationship between or amongst the objects for a certain process or certain logic to implement or to work, right? Like for instance, we have account as an object in Salesforce, and we have contacts also in Salesforce. So it is somehow, accounts is somehow related to contacts. So how it is related? So basically account, as I said, it's the details of all the organizations that we have, like TCS, etc. But the contacts are the employees in that company. So in a particular company, there might be thousands of employees. So account being the parent object and contact being the child object, it's a one-to-many relationship. Like account is one, like in terms of a company, TCS is a company. It has thousands of employees, right? So those details related to employees are stored in contacts. So in Salesforce, we have basic two types of relationships. One is one-to-many relationship and many-to-many relationship. As I discussed, one-to-many is nothing but the parent being one object, and many are the child objects, which are nothing but a particular parent object can have multiple child objects associated with that. Then we have many-to-many relationships that we'll discuss after we have discussed about what is a lookup and master detail relationship. So these two types of relationships are most important relationships. What in terms of lookup and master detail, even in interviews, like this is the basic question that is asked multiple times. Even in Salesforce certifications, we have questions related to this topic. So lookup relationship and master detail relationship both are one-to-many relationship only. But the difference between them is in master detail relationship, right? Parent record, that is a parent object record, is mandatory in the child object, and whereas in lookup relationship it is not mandatory. I'll show you with an example, but let me list out the difference first. Then the second important point is, if at all in master detail relationship, if the master object, that is a parent object record, is deleted, all the child related records will also get deleted. So basically there is a cascade delete, whereas in case of lookup relationship, the parent object is not required in the child object, and also the child record does not get deleted if the record is deleted. And one more important thing is, in master detail relationship, whatever the security or sharing rules that we have implemented, right, sharing security, so that will be inherited from the parent object. Whereas in case of lookup, like child and parent are independent. So let me show you that with an example. So I've already created two objects just to save time, like G product and G service. I'll go to this object. I have associated field, lookup field for master. So here, if you notice, in G surveys object, I have a lookup relationship with parent being the G product. Basically, here in business terms, will be having a particular product which would be requiring an offline or an online survey to be conducted. Because of which I'm creating a lookup relationship wherein G product is a parent object, and G survey is the child object. So to create the lookup field also, it's like similar to the one that we saw in to create a service custom field. I'll go to fields and relationships, and you can select a lookup relationship here. Go to next, and you can specify the parent object that you want for this particular object. So I can consider it as account or anything for now. But since we already have this fields, I'll not be going to create this field. Just for your reference, how a lookup field looks like. So now I'll go to G surveys. I'll open any one record. it has a lookup relation to G product, right? I'll see if the fields are listed or not. Go to page layout. So I already have this G product object here. So if you notice, in surveys we have a lookup field to G product. So this G product being the main object. So when I click on this, it directs me to that particular object, G product object. So this is about a lookup field. So we'll see what is a master detail relationship field. I'll go back to G product. So I have a particular object that I've already created to group the number of G products, and that is G product group. So I have created a master detail relationship to that object. If you notice, we have the data type as master detail relationship. Again, to create a master detail relationship, you just go hit the new button and select the master detail relationship that we have it here. Okay, but if you notice, this is not uh, what to say enabled because G product is not the parent object. Okay, because of which a master detail relationship cannot be created and the existing records is already there. So that is the reason a pop-up is there. And relevant to lookup and master details, Salesforce provides us with details like what is the exact difference when you're trying to create and field also. So to create a field, I need to go to the parent object only, that is G product group. And I can create a field from here. Here the field will be enabled because this is a parent object, and you can create a parent field, and you can define the associated object with that, any particular object. So the main difference or main aim of adding a master detail relationship field is because if you notice that we have the master detail object associated here, right? But if I go to this object, the advantages of master detail is you can create a roll-up summary. Roll-up summary is nothing but a read-only field that can be created to check the maximum amount or the minimum amount or the sum of any particular value or the count of any value in Salesforce. So in usually we cannot do that in terms of if you want exact count of number of G products, right? We cannot have it. If you go to the related list, if it is exceeding 6 or 10, then it does not show the exact count of the number of products that we have. So that is the reason we are using a roll-up summary, which will be only applicable when there is a master detail relationship in the parent object. So it has around 15 G products. This is one of the roll-up summaries that we have in that we have it in G product group. So if you go to fields and relationships, so see count of G products, it is again if you know, if you open that, you'll understand. So after defining the details, I'll specify whether it's a summary type is count or what. And if it is like if you want to sum up some certain fields, then you can do that as well, or find the maximum of the product price, etc. Even that can be done. So if you notice, if I select sum or max or min value, I'll have these fields to aggregate. That is the which field needs to be considered, whether it's whether it's a product price or the total number of service. But here max minimum values will be added only to see the product price, right? So these are the roll up summary fields wherein for all the 15 products I can see the sum of the product price and also the maximum of all the prices, product price value, and the minimum of the value. So in real time, this will be very useful when you are when you want to have an account, when you want to have maintain an account of all the number of child objects for a parent object. So this is about master detailed relationship. Then we have a self and hierarchical relationship, which is nothing but a lookup relationship within the object. Now that in one to lookup and master detail relationships, we have two objects wherein there is separate parent object and a child object. But whereas in case of self relationship, we'll have a relationship within the same object. So for instance, we have a parent account details in an account object. So if you go to accounts, if I open any one account, you have a parent account. Basically, this depicts when you're creating an object and you want to maintain a parent record, and related to that we want certain below records in the same object. Even that can be done with the help of this thing. What do you say? User lookup self relationship. And hierarchical relationship is nothing but same as self relationship, but it is used in user object. So the real time cases when you want to have users are nothing but they are the basically they are the what to say they are all the details related to the users are stored in user object. So if you want to maintain a manager with his subordinates, then that can be done through hierarchical relationship. So the differences I've listed, like what is master detail and what is lookup relationship, and what are the basic difference. Like the child inherits the security from parent in master, whereas it is not the same case in case of lookup. Now coming back to Salesforce security model, which is an important concept because be it whatever the complex situation that you're working on, one important thing is it's always important to have the basics of what is the security model in Salesforce and how you can define an access and at an object or at a field level or the record level, etc. So the first of it being it's an organization level security in Salesforce. So sorry. So here what happens is basically if you want to maintain a list of authorized users who can log into your developers org or your business org or anything for that cause, then you can use organization level security. And also in order to maintain the IP ranges within which this works, even that time you can use an organization level security model, or when you're defining IP ranges from which the user can access uh, your org, or even the time, like when we define a time when the user can access and and the rest of the time they have to be restricted, then organization level security can be used. So as I told, we can do it in three forms. One is through restricting the IPs and through maintaining the password policies, and the third one is login access. Nothing but we are defining a particular time when the users can log in basically. So this can be done in Salesforce. I'll show you how to do that. I'll go to home, profile. So all this is done at profile level only. So I'll open any one of the profiles. So first thing is, if I want to specify the IP ranges within which the user can access, I can add those IP ranges here, specify the IP ranges here. If I want to maintain the password policies, before that, I'll see how we can restrict the users to access within the login hours. So we have login hours. We can define that as well. Like If you want to restrict on weekends the employees to not log in, the users to not log in on weekends, we can specify that. And if you want to maintain the night shift associates to only log in during that time, we can define that as well. And one more thing is password policy is nothing but as we come across when we are creating an account. So we can define the password expiry date and like the minimum password length. You can change it accordingly. So these details can be changed. So here, so these can be specified at a profile level. So this is about organization level security, which is the highest form of security in Salesforce. Then after that, the most important thing is object level security. So once you are log into the org, it's always important that specific profile should access only specific objects, right? It's not necessary that a sales team below a sales team, is able to access G products and is able to edit the object related to sales team. So we need to define like which particular profile can access a particular object. So like sales team should be accessing only relevant objects related to sales, and service team can access only objects related to services, and marketing team for instance, they can access only their specific objects. So basically providing access related object related access is very important, becomes very important when you are defining the access. So for that, to define that, again you can do that through profiles itself. If you notice in the same profiles we have standard and custom objects. So you can define the crude operations, like whether the sales team, now this being the aviation sales profile, so you can specify whether read access has to be given or write access has to be given. See, these are the standard objects. If you want to define it for custom objects, you can check it here. So for G products, if sales team does not require service team does not require an edit option, only the read option is required, you can define that here. And also in one more way, we can define the object level setting is through permission sets. Again, permission sets is nothing but a collection of settings that will enable the user functional access upon the profile access. So sometimes in real time scenarios, what happens is there would be profiles as well as, there would be a sales team and a service team. For instance, there are around 2 to 3 members in sales team and 2 to 3 members in service team. And if someone from sales team has gone on a holiday and service team is required to perform certain sales tasks, so they would be requiring an access to those sales products, right? Sales objects basically. So in an exceptional case, how do we do that? We cannot define multiple profiles to a user. Like we cannot define a sales profile to a service profile user. So one profile only can be one can be given assigned to a particular user. So in that case, we have a concept of permission sets, wherein you can you can give an you can extend your access upon the profile access for that particular user. So that can be done from your go to permission sets. We already have few permission sets here. If you want to create a new permission set, you can specify that here. This thing. Then I'll go to the object settings. And here you will have all the objects listed. So you can select any one object. For instance, I want to take account as an object, and I can define define any particular access that is already given. These access cannot be given here right now because in profile it is already been restricted, because of which we cannot override. So basically, if you have given any access in profile level, you cannot restrict the access beyond that. So in profiles, when in permission sets, it's only about extending the access. Since these accesses are already given at profile level, we are not seeing this as enabled option. But whereas if at all, if it is restricted, we'll see this as enabled option. We can specify the access accordingly. So once you do that, you can go to manage assignment and assign it to the specific user. Like for instance, I want to give sales object access to any access object service object user. So I can add that assignment and add that user who is belonging to the service team. So this is about object level security. So this can be done through profiles and permissions that we have already discussed. Then field level security, coming to field level security, it's nothing but therein it's about hiding a particular field without hiding the object, or restricting the access to a particular field, right? Without hiding the object basically. So here in this case, as we have already discussed, there would be a sales team and a service team. So here we would not be, restricting the sales related object or a product G product object as in our case to the service team, but we would only be restricting certain fields like, for instance, we'll have certain fields like the product price field, product, what do you say, product manufacturing date, which is not relevant to the service team, for instance. So those details can be hidden from the service teams or a service profile. So that can be done through field level security. But in field level security, we cannot extend any access, but we can only, what to say, we can only restrict the access. So at profile level, if any access is given, like edit and delete access, we can only restrict the access, but we cannot extend the access in case of field level security. And again, we can do that from here only. The field level securities can be defined from here. I'll go to G product. I'll take up any particular field like text field. I'll go to, we'll have an option like field level, set field level security. We can go there and we can define whether this is required or not, whether it should be visible to all or not. If it's not required, then we can specifically for that profile, we can change it and save it, and so that that field will not be reflecting to that profile. So that is about field level securities. Then once we know what is an object level security, field level, it's like defining the access. It's better to understand what is how we can restrict the access at record level. Basically, see, in real time cases, as we see here, we have a G product, right? This G product is one of this custom objects, and this particular object is associated with an account. Okay, this particular object is associated with an account, and if I want to make sure that only that particular account contacts, related contacts, should be seeing this records. So basically for every record, right, there would be a owner to that record, whoever has created. So that owner can define the record access basically. So for instance, this G product, it has an associated account like Airbus or anything. And if I want to just define, let me just open one for you. Let's consider a service. So this G service has an account related field for this. So if I want to only make sure that the associated contacts who are there in Airbus, only they can see these records. It's not necessary that all the contacts that are there in Salesforce or an object or in Salesforce, they should be seeing this, right? So if I want to define a criteria wherein specific account related contacts can see this particular record, so for that case, we can define the sharing rule at record level basically. So that can be, it's not like the object and the field will be visible, only the records will be either editable or they'll not be editable accordingly. So this can be done through organization wide default, through role hierarchies, through sharing roles, this through manual sharing. This again are like separate concepts which would require in detail explanation, but I'll try to show you how we can do that. So through organization wide default OWD, it's again these topics are very important in terms of interviews and also Salesforce certifications, wherein these are common questions that are asked very often. So I'll go to sharing settings. So if you notice at object level, right, we have all the objects like accounts, contacts, G, products, etc. So we can define the type of access that is required. So this can be, we have different types of access, like we have private, wherein if you give private as an access, then the other users cannot even see the record. But if it is public read only, then the other users can only see it as a read only field. If at all, if it is a public read, if we define, then the other users can read and write. And also if we select the last one, it's like we can transfer. So accordingly we can define that. But this would be this would be a common access. But if you want to give an access specifically, like based on certain criteria, then we have sharing rules. Sharing rules are nothing but you are based on the criteria you are defining uh, whom the access has to be given to. So here, so these are the sharing rules which are there specific to all the objects. So you can create a sharing rule, specify the name, and based on the record owner, you can define the rule type, whether it should be based on the criteria or anything. If it's criteria, then you can define the relevant criteria in the, or you can define the field in that respective object and what should be the value. Accordingly, you can share it with the relevant users, be it in terms of public groups or roles and subordinate. Public groups is nothing but we just create a group separately and add the list of users to that. So this is about sharing rule. Then we have role hierarchies. Role hierarchies, as the name suggests, it's like we set up a hierarchy in Salesforce. So basically what that does is, if at all we have a manager, and for to the manager, both the sales representative and a service representative, reports to them. Then the owners, the record owners who are sales rep and service rep, all these records can be visible, can be accessed by the manager, because manager um, being the like a level up in the hierarchy. So we can set up the roles accordingly. We can add the other associates and the sales rep, so that sales rep can access those records. So specifically that can be done through role hierarchies and can be achieved. Manual sharing is nothing but without any criteria. If you want to share a record manually, then we have a sharing option in Salesforce Classic, from wherein for that particular record you can share it with any user. So this is about record level access. Hope it's clear so far. Let me know if you have any queries. I know I'm being a bit fast because these topics are like very important and we need to cover these topics with real-time examples. That's the reason I'm trying to cover it as fast as possible. So let's go ahead, right? So the next topic is we'll see what is formula fields and validation rules in Salesforce. Jazakallah. So let me show you with an example. In G surveys, we have a few fields like city, state, postal code, and country. And when a user is entering, he will not be, as we have seen in many applications that we'll be using, will obviously be have different fields like to enter the door number, then street in a specific field, then city and postal code and country in different fields, right? But once we enter that, ultimately, if you notice in Zomato or somewhere, delivery address will be shown as a complete address, right? So we can achieve certain such scenarios by using formula fields. So now that I already have, I'll show you how we can do that. So I'll go to G service. I already have these fields like city, country, etc., which are separate fields. I want to like add all this, accumulate this, all these values in a single address text field. So for that, I'll create a new formula field. And I want it to be text return type. Okay, then once I click this, I'll have a space wherein I can define the formula, wherein I can specify the formula, like what formula I need to specify, like how we can do this. Now, since we already have a city, state, etc., so we can concatenate this into a single field, right? So I already have the formula with me, which I've already created. I'll be using this, wherein what I'm doing is I'm just concatenating street, city, state, postal code, country code, etc., into a single field. So once I have defined the formula, I can check the syntax if there is any syntax errors related to this. Street, city, state, country. Okay, now since I've all when I check syntax, there are no syntax errors, so I can save this. But one more option is when we'll have blank values in address, right? So I can consider blank field as blank, else it will consider it as zeros. Then field level security, as I've already discussed, we can define it for different profiles, and I'll save it. And I'm adding it in the survey layout. Okay, now I'll just refresh it. G service. So I have this new field created, formula field. So I'll add up the values like number 14, third cross, Bangalore, state Karnataka, 4, India. So once I save this value, if you notice, this is the formula field and this will be calculated upon save. Just a moment. So once I save this, I'll see the whole field as a single text value. So this is one of the significance of formulas. But not only this, you can define anything like based on certain conditions. So for an object, if you have in G products, right, based on the rating, you can specify the score of that object. Like based on if it's a poor, if it's an object is with poor rating, then you can specify. You can have a field formula field which reflects the score, like out of 10 it should be 2 or 3, something like that. So that can also be achieved through formula fields. So after that, we'll see what are validation rules. We have already discussed roll-up summaries and its uses, but a real-time example of what is a validation rule, I'll explain. So in GE surveys, I have validation rules are nothing but whenever you're saving the records, right? You are actually checking, you are configuring a validation which checks for certain fields based on the criteria. So in GE survey, I have already created a validation rule. I go to validation rules. So I've created validation rule to make sure that the survey date should not be a future date. It should always be a date which is already passed from today. Like a survey, whenever we are logging in any survey related to a product, obviously it'll be a not a future date or the present date, but the previous date. So that is what I've specified it here. If I go to edit option, I have specified the name and the description. Then again, like formula fields, we'll have an option wherein we can define the formula. So formula date time is nothing but the field. It is checking if it is greater than today. That is like if it's a future date or if it is a blank value. Then then it throws an error. That the error also can be defined here. Like survey date time is mandatory and should not be used in future. So I'll try that by creating a new survey, since that validation rule is already in place. Tests, just for now, I'll consider it as test. Yeah, good. Then when without entering the survey date, if I try to hit the save button, I'll get that error. Okay. Okay, this is related to some account helper that I'll check. One second. So when I save it, I'm getting this error that survey date and time is mandatory and should be used. This is the same error that I've defined in the validation rule. So if I try to give any date that is a future date from today, again I'll get the same error. So that's the reason we can have a few previous date for this, and you can save it accordingly. And the survey is saved. So this is the significance of validation rule. I have also added one more validation rule wherein I am checking if at all if the GE survey rating is poor, right? Then we need to define like what is the exact details related to that. That is, feedback is mandatory whenever the rating is poor. So if you notice, the condition is if at all if the survey rating which is a field if it is poor, and if survey feedback is mandatory. If it is blank, then it throws an error that survey rating is mandatory, survey feedback is mandatory when the rate is poor. So for that, I'll try to show how it works. So if I'm selecting poor as the rating and specify survey expenses something as 50, then, and if I also specify the previous date as survey date, if I try to save it, I get an error that survey feedback is mandatory whenever the rating is poor. So I need to specify the feedback. I'll just you can that is the user has to enter the details related to why the rating is poor. So this is about formula fields.
సిక్ లీవ్ పెడితే సిక్ లీవ్ కు మరి సర్టిఫికేట్ చూపెట్టాలి కదా.
Could you please mute whoever is
ఆ
speaking?
కారణంతో నార్మల్
Okay. So post that we have workflows, process builders, and flows and approval process, which are nothing but automation processes in Salesforce. So I'll just try to cover this quickly. We had discussed what is flows in our previous session as well. So basically, a flow is an automation process which is nothing but a collection of tasks through which you can process a set of data in order to achieve a certain requirement. So I'll quote that with an example. Again, if you want to go to workflows, you just have to type workflows. And once you go to workflows, you have all the details related to say workflows here, like what is workflow and on what basis it is, like we can invoke a workflow and what is the criteria that is used. So all these details are present here. So even if a new beginner, if he wants to explore on workflows without without having much prior knowledge, he can directly go to this workflows and start playing around with this. So in workflows, I have already created few workflows just to save my time. I have created a workflow. We have a field in GE product as premium product. Okay. So what happens is whenever the product price in GE product object is greater than a certain value, and that particular checkbox is unchecked, then that checks to true. So that is a workflow. So how did I create that? I'll just show you. So I specified the details and I've evaluated the criteria, like when should that when this particular workflow should be invoked. Whenever the record is either created, we have three options, and whenever the record is created or every time it's edited, or created anytime it's edited to subsequently meet the criteria. So basically the difference is, as the name suggests, whenever the workflow, what happens here is, if I go to G products, if I open any one specific value, so this, if I select the first criteria, then this particular workflow will only be triggered when the record is created. When I try to edit this record, it will not be invoked again. So whenever I'm changing the product price, so if at all, if it is unchecked, and if the value is greater than 50,000, then this work will not run and this will not be checked. So that is the reason we should not select the created. But when if we select the second option, that is created and every time it's edited, so what happens is every time whenever even if it is a manufacturing date field, right? Even when this is edited, even that time the workflow rules and checks for the condition. Workflow runs and checks for the condition, which is not advisable at all. Like, I mean, basically you're running workflow for every field which is not relevant to that specific field. So that is the reason I have selected the third option, that is created and anytime it's edited to subsequently meet the criteria. That is, it will only run when this particular product price and these two fields are changed or edited. Only that time the workflow will run. So let's see with an example, since that is already in place. So similarly, I have created other workflows as well. So once you select the criteria, you define the criteria, like what should be the criteria when the workflow should run. That is, we have a product price field in G product object, and premium customer checkbox, again that's a field in G product. So we are checking both the fields. So if at all, if the product price is greater than this value, and if it is unchecked, then this particular, and this premium product customer checkbox is unchecked, then this particular workflow runs. So I'll just test for one workflow. So I'll define the value as some value. So if you notice, the value changes. This premium product and premium customer checkbox, this both gets checked according to the workflows that I've already designed. So this is the use of workflows in Salesforce. But see, for every one such instances, now if I change it again, if I make this value as less than this, then these two checkboxes are unchecked because I've created a separate workflow rule for that as well. The first workflow rule basically it'll run when the product price is greater than 50,000. Then the second will run. See, if you notice, the second will run when the product price is less than 50,000 and the checkbox is checked. So separately, I have to define that in workflows. So to overcome this, right, basically we are defining different workflows for each of the scenario, which is not advisable. So we can use process builders here. So process builders comes to the rescue. Basically, process builder in extension to whatever workflow is, it is similar to workflow, but it is kind of an enhancement to workflow automation process, wherein even the order of execution can be controlled, and even when if you want to update any other object related to one object, if you can, then even that can be done. But in workflows, it's like when you're writing a workflow, when you're writing a workflow only in one particular product, you can check the condition, and only in that object you can make changes or field changes. Whereas in process builders, you can define the criteria in one object, and at the same time you can update the fields or any values in another object. So that is one advantage. And also in process builders, right, we have extra actions. In workflows only we have four tasks that can be done, like sending emails, creating tasks, when we are updating fields like what we have done now, or even in outbound messages. So but in case of process builders, we have extra few tasks, like few tasks like we can invoke a class, apex class. If you're writing an apex, any customized logic there, we can call that logic from a process builder. If you want to call an approval process, even that is possible through workflow process builders. And if you want to post chat, even that can be done through process builders. So these are certain advantages of process builders over workflows. So I'll show you the same scenario. I can achieve that through a process builder as well. So again, go to settings and just enter process builders, and I have created one process builder already. So basically, this is for again for GE products. So if you have multiple if conditions or multiple criteria through which, then you can use process builders. So I define the object in which it has to run, in which the condition has to be checked. So I'm checking the condition in this premium product price. So I define the premium product. If it is greater than, if the currency is greater than 50,000, and if it is unchecked, if it is true, then I perform the action. So what are the actions that we have? It's like premium product should be equal to true. This is one scenario. But again, if it is less than 50,000, it goes under false, it goes to this loop. It checks for the premium product if it is already checked, and if the value is less than 50,000, it performs this action. So these can be achieved in a single process builder, without having without using multiple workflows as in below before cases. So if you go to add actions, you have these many actions, like invoking an apex class, email alerts. You can even call flows or submit for approval process from process builders. So this is about process builders. Then the most important amongst all of these automation process is this thing, flows. Flows basically, whenever you are trying to create a flow, or whenever you're trying to create a process builder or a flow, right, or a workflow, then Salesforce always recommends, see, when I try to create this, see, it says it always recommends me to use the flow builder, because it's a low code automation, because it's a very powerful business tool through which you can achieve any functionality. See, basically workflows and process builders, they are triggered when the records are updated, right? Only when the records are changed, during that time the process builders and workflows are invoked. But whereas flows, it's not the same case. whatever be the customized logic, you can create a workflow. Basically, you can give an interface to the user, for instance, to create a contact, and at the back end you can implement a logic. So any logic can be implemented without, just for the records being saved or anything specific to that. So that's why process this is a new or type of thing which through which you can achieve any functionality. And one advantage with flows is it's low code, no code. Sorry, there is no code required. Only you have to implement the logic, and you can achieve your functionalities. So that is about flows. So I'll show you with an example what exactly a flow is. This would be the last topic that I would be covering today. Probably Salesforce customization. We can take that as a separate topic in our if we have our next upcoming sessions. So again, if I go to flows, hit on to create a new flow. I have different types of flows basically. What is a screen flow? Whenever you go here, right, you have all the details related to those flows. That is the beauty of Salesforce. So any new person who's a beginner or anything, he can directly, have details from here, and he can start building on the application. So screen flows are nothing but an interface is provided wherein the user can provide his inputs based on which any specific logic or anything, any particular flow can be implemented. So record triggered flow, it's again same to workflows and process builders. Whenever we are, when the records are updated or changed, these flows can be triggered basically. And then schedule trigger, when we can schedule a flow according to this. Then platform event, it's like again triggered flow basically. It launches when a platform event message is received. Whenever there is a message that is received, again similar to process builders, we have this option in process builders as well. But the most important one is auto launch flow. So this particular flow can be called even from an apex class or from a process builder basically, whenever there is a record that is being changed or updated, etc. So I'll just select any one of them. So once you select this, you have different options. Like you can either have a screen, you can define a screen wherein you can add the labels. Like I can specify the names, etc., like the first name and the last name. So whenever the user is accessing this, he'll have the flow in this similar ways. And also you have options to get to assignment, like assignment and decision is again similar. To check the criteria, as we can use this. And assignments is like if you are assigning a value to a particular variable or input value, if whatever the input values that we got, we can assign it to a variable. So that can be done to this. And loop is like you are adding a loop wherein you can loop over for instance, if you want to send a custom message to a list of users, right? So you're not to a single user, you can do it directly, right? But to add on the number of users according to a particular profile or a public group, so that in that way we can use this loop. Then we have like options to say get the records or select the records or update the records accordingly, that I have already implemented in my use case, so I'll be showing that. So that is about flows. So I have already created one particular flow. Just to save time, I'll show you how it works. So here basically my main aim and through this flow is, whenever I'm creating a G product group, right, it has an associated account number. Okay, so when I just enter the account number, at backend it searches for the relevant account, whatever the account that is there from the account object, and directly it populates the value in the account field. So basic requirement is, whenever I'm creating a product group object, I have a field called account number. So when I enter the account number, based on that account number, it fetches me the account details from the account object. Okay, so now I'll go to this flow and I'll show you how it works. Basically, the working is simple. It's an auto launch flow. So I'm calling auto launch flow, as I told you, it can be called from a process builder or an Apex class. Basically, whenever the records are changed or updated. So I'm calling it from a process builder. This is a process builder basically. So it is in the GA product group. So I'm checking the criteria. What is the criteria? Criteria is if the when the account number is not null, I'll be calling this particular flow. See, uh, so when I'm calling this flow, I'm also saving the values of account number, whatever that is entered in G product from the user in this particular variable, and account ID from backend. I'm fetching it and I'm saving it here. Then I'll come back to the flows. So I'm getting the records and just updating the records basically. So again, I'll query from the account object. When the account number of that object is equal to the one that I have entered in the G product group of record, then it actually what it checks, it checks the account ID. It maps it to it saves the value of the account ID into the ID. So once that is done, I'm just assigning the values in G product group. So I'm just saving the values, whatever the account field that I have in G product group. I'm adding that value, that account ID value here. So see, if I just explain like this, probably you might have some confusions. But once you start working on this, you'll understand how does this actually work. Basically, whatever the account number that I have saved from the G product, I've saved it in the process builder in one variable. I'm again calling the same variable from there and saving, and accordingly I'm fetching the account details from the account object, and that particular account name I'm saving it in a G product group. So let me show you how it works. I'll try to clone the same object. If you notice, I'll probably add another account number that I already have. I'll show you the account details related to that as well. So this is the account number that I'm entering, but I'm not entering any account details. So I'll just save it. Once I save it, the account name automatically gets populated. So if I go to this account, see the account number, because of this account number, this value is fetched from here and it is added to the G product group. So that is one of the working of flows. And one advantage of flows is you can easily debug. You can debug if you have any issues with that. Like if your flow is failing, you have an option to debug. So I'll just specify whatever the product group ID that I have and the account number. Account number, I'll specify it as this one. And the G product group, I'll specify it as this one. So here you can understand the flow, like it defines like how it is, how the values are mapped in get records. Account number equals to the G product number, then that particular record is found in the account object when with that account number, and then it updates that value in the account field of the G product group. So this is one scenario wherein you can use a process build, where you can use a flow. So similarly, to send out any custom notifications when a record is created or something, we can use flows there as well. So one last topic that is left today is regarding approval process. As the name suggests, it's nothing but an automated process to define the hierarchy level wherein if you want to send out a record for approval, for instance, in GE surveys, right, whenever the user he creates a GE survey, right, he'll define a survey expense. If it is greater than 100 USD, then it has to go to his manager for approval. Then only this amount can be reimbursed. Something like that in real time scenario. So how can we achieve that? It's again simple. Go to approval process. I've already created an approval process for your reference. So again, this approval process, right? It is again called from a process builder. So process builder comes in very handy for many of the, if you want to, if you're calling any automation process, see that particular approval process is called from this process builder. So I'm calling it in G survey object. I'm checking if the survey expense is more than 50,000 100 USD. Okay, survey greater than 100 USD. I'll just call this action submit for approval. I'll call the approval process, whichever I have designed it for now, and I'll specify the message, whatever the message that is required. So I'll go to this. We'll check what we have done here. We have entered the criteria, that is, if it is greater than 100 USD, it goes to the manager for approval. Next automated approval determined by manager. Okay, that's all we have done. Nothing specific. So I'll show you with the real time case. So we have one profile name as John Peter. So I log in with this user and see if this is working fine or not. Separately logged in as this. I'll go to surveys. I'll add one survey. It is an offline survey. Okay. Approval survey. I can define any account. Rating, anything is fine. I'll define the expenses as 110. Survey date, sorry, I missed survey date. Save. Sorry, it is not changed. I'll change it again. So once I have saved this value, this has gone to the manager for approval. See, if you go to related and see, I have submitted, but it is pending with my name, who is a manager, to approve this particular record. So I have already logged in with my user in another page. So I'll go there. So I've received a notification as well that John Peter is requesting approval for a GV survey. So I click on this. I have three options. Either I can approve, reject, or reassign. For now, I'll just approve it. Specify this, approve. So once the record is approved, I'll come back to John Peter and see the history, what happened. So the record is approved. And also in my Gmail account, I would be receiving an email as well with whether when it is pending for approval. So that is about approval processes. Then we have customization in Salesforce. I believe we have covered enough of the topics today. So this would require a separate topic wherein we can understand when is customization used and what are the different ways customization logic can be implemented, be it in the form of Apex classes. And in Apex classes, what is a test class and what is the maximum code coverage that is required as per Salesforce standards, and what are triggers and how triggers work, what are the different context variables in triggers, and what are the trigger events, and post that we can have a look on what is patch apex, etc. When we are updating bulk records, we can use batch apex. Then what are different lightning components, aura components, etc. So for that we would inshallah plan a separate session and we can discuss there. For now, jazakallah for joining the session and being so patient and hearing me out. Jazakallah. And please let me know if you have any questions. Then are we good to close if we don't have any questions? Saif bhai, are you there? Okay, then jazakallah for joining the session. We shall close. We'll go ahead and close the call. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.